In the heart of South America lies a vast, arid, and seemingly forgotten region, territory where the climate imposes extreme challenges. The vegetation is hostile, and water has always been a precious, life-sustaining resource. It was here, in the Gran Chaco, that two South American nations, Paraguay and Bolivia, became entangled in one of the most intense and least remembered conflicts of the 20th century. A war that consumed lives, resources, and national spirit for 3 long years. The Chaco War, fought between 1932 and 1935, was far more than a simple territorial dispute. It was a perfect storm, driven by economic ambitions, deep-seated national pride, a series of misguided strategic decisions, and, above all, the tantalizing promise of a subterranean resource believed capable of changing destinies: oil. Today, we revisit this history, a story nearly erased from our collective memory. To understand how the illusion of black gold led to neighboring countries down a path of mutual destruction. The stage for this conflict is the Chaco Boreal, a part of the immense Gran Chaco Plain that stretches across Paraguay, Bolivia, Argentina, and Brazil. This is a land of extremes. During the dry season, the earth cracks under a relentless sun, and temperatures soar. When the rains come, the dusty plains transform into impassable swamps. For centuries, this forbidding landscape was considered of little strategic or economic value, inhabited primarily by indigenous groups who had adapted to its harsh conditions. But in the early 20th century, that perception began to change dramatically. Rumors and geological surveys, often speculative, started to paint a different picture, one of a region potentially sitting atop vast reservoirs of petroleum. To understand why this promise was so potent, we must look at the historical scars carried by both nations. Paraguay was still grappling with the devastating aftermath of the War of the Triple Alliance in the late 19th century. That conflict had cost the nation more than half its population and a significant portion of its territory. This trauma forged a powerful national sentiment of defense, resilience, and a fierce determination to never again lose sovereign land. For Paraguay, the Chaco was a matter of national survival and reconstruction. Bolivia, on the other hand, was haunted by a different loss. The War of the Pacific, fought against Chile in the late 1800s, had stripped Bolivia of its entire coastline, leaving it landlocked. This geographic isolation was a source of constant economic and strategic anxiety. For decades, Bolivian leaders dreamed of regaining access to the sea. They saw the Paraguay River, which flows along the eastern edge of the Chaco, as a potential corridor to the Atlantic Ocean. Control of the Chaco, therefore, was not just about land. It was about securing a vital artery for international trade and breaking free from dependency on its neighbors. Into this volatile mix of historical grievances and strategic ambitions came the lure of oil. In the early 1900s, the world was entering the age of petroleum. Oil was the fuel of modernity, powering industries, armies, and navies. For developing nations like Bolivia and Paraguay, discovering significant reserves meant the possibility of economic independence, international prestige, and a ticket to prosperity. International oil companies, particularly Standard Oil of New Jersey and Bolivia and Royal Dutch Shell, which was perceived to be backing Paraguay, began to show interest. While their direct involvement is still debated by historians, their presence undoubtedly fueled the fire. The belief that the Chaco held the key to a brighter future turned a long-simmering border dispute into an explosive national cause for both countries. The road to confrontation was paved with escalating diplomatic tensions. From the late 1920s, both nations began to build small forts, or fortines, in the disputed territory, creeping deeper into the desolate wilderness. These isolated outposts became flashpoints for skirmishes. Treaties and arbitration attempts failed one after another as nationalistic fervor grew. Communication between governments broke down, replaced by aggressive rhetoric and military posturing. In June 1932, a Bolivian attack on a Paraguayan fort at Pitiantuta ignited the fuse. Despite last-ditch efforts to de-escalate, the conflict had gained its own terrible momentum. What could have been resolved through negotiations spiraled into open, declared warfare. Once the war began, both armies quickly discovered their most formidable enemy was not each other, but the Chaco itself. This was a brutal war of logistics. The environment imposed constant, debilitating challenges. Soldiers on both sides endured scorching heat that could reach 45 degrees Celsius, followed by sudden, bone-chilling cold spells. Drinkable water was so scarce, it became a strategic objective in itself, with battles fought over control of a single well. The dense, thorny vegetation tore uniforms and flesh, providing perfect cover for ambushes. Venomous snakes, insects, and tropical diseases like malaria claimed countless lives. For Bolivia, the logistical nightmare was even greater. Its troops and supplies had to travel over 800 kilometers from the high Andes Mountains, a grueling journey that left soldiers exhausted before they even reached the front. These environmental challenges profoundly shaped military strategy. Paraguay, closer to the conflict zone, adopted a more flexible and audacious approach. Its commanders, like the brilliant Marshal José Félix Estegarribia, understood the terrain. They used guerrilla tactics, encircling and isolating Bolivian garrisons by cutting off their water and supply lines. The Paraguayan soldiers, many of whom were more familiar with the hot, humid lowlands, adapted better to the conditions. Bolivia, in contrast, initially relied on a more conventional, European-style doctrine. With a larger, better-equipped army on paper, Bolivian generals favored frontal assaults, which proved disastrous in the dense bush. They struggled to adapt their strategies to the unforgiving environment, leading to staggering losses. For the soldiers on the ground, life was a relentless struggle for survival. The experience was marked by long periods of anxious waiting in disease-ridden trenches, punctuated by moments of intense, brutal combat. Letters and diaries from the front paint a harrowing picture of constant thirst, gnawing hunger, and the psychological strain of being so far from home. Men from the Bolivian highlands, accustomed to cold, thin air, suffered immensely in the suffocating heat of the lowlands. Paraguayan soldiers fought with a desperate ferocity, believing they were defending their very homeland from another invasion. The Chaco War left deep, indelible scars on an entire generation of young men, a silent trauma that would echo through their families for decades. After 3 years of relentless fighting, both nations were utterly exhausted. The economic and human cost had become unsustainable. By 1935, Paraguay controlled most of the disputed territory, but its army was overextended and its resources depleted. Bolivia had suffered a series of devastating military defeats, leading to political instability at home. With both sides at a stalemate, international pressure for peace mounted. A ceasefire was finally negotiated in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and on June 12, 1935, the guns in the Chaco fell silent. The peace treaty, signed in 1938, officially awarded Paraguay about 3/4 of the disputed Chaco Boreal. Bolivia retained a small corridor to the Paraguay River, though it was not the wide, sovereign access it had originally sought. The political map of the region was redrawn, but the outcome felt hollow for both sides. The war had cost an estimated 90,000 lives and bankrupted both countries, leaving behind a legacy of bitterness and economic ruin. And then came the greatest, most bitter irony of the Chaco War. After the fighting was over and the borders were set, extensive exploration revealed the truth about the region's supposed wealth. The vast oil reserves that had fueled the conflict simply did not exist in the quantities imagined. While some natural gas and minor oil deposits were eventually found, they were located primarily in the Andean foothills of Bolivia. Outside the territory that had been so fiercely contested, the war for oil had been fought over an illusion. A conflict driven by an economic promise ended up leaving a legacy of loss, with more questions than answers about the true cost of nationalism and ambition. The Chaco War teaches us profound lessons about how political decisions, fueled by economic expectations and historical grievances, can lead to catastrophic consequences. It stands as a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict, especially one fought over resources that turned out to be a mirage, though it remains one of history's forgotten wars, overshadowed by the larger global conflicts of the 20th century. Its story is essential for understanding the complex tapestry of South American history. By remembering the sacrifices made in the arid plains of the Chaco, we honor the memory of those who fought and reflect on the enduring importance of peace and diplomacy. Learning from this tragic past is our best hope for building a wiser future. If this story helped you understand a little more about our shared history, please like the video and share it with others who are passionate about the past. Subscribe to our channel to continue exploring in-depth, well-researched historical content. Your support helps us keep these important stories alive. Thank you for watching.